So finally, you've done all of this work, your evaluation team has gone out, collected a bunch of data, your implementer has implemented the project. You come back, you have all of this information. It's really important to share it. And I want to emphasize firstly that data sharing can start at the baseline. I think there's a misconception that you only get the results of the impact evaluation until the end of the project or the end line of the data collection when they go back after the project has been implemented. And it's true that we can't measure the impact of our program until after it's been implemented and you've had a second level of end line data collection. But there's a lot of really rich, valuable data that we get in the baseline data collection process that we can use almost immediately as USAID to start testing our theory of change assumptions. So, for example, we might go into a project with an assumption that women's land rights tend to be disadvantaged as compared to men, that women aren't allowed to hold land, or they perceive that they are more at risk of encroachment or expropriation than men. But we're finding already that in a number of countries that's not the case, that women feel roughly equally secure as men. And so that helps us as USAID think about what types of interventions might be appropriate in our current round of programming, but also it influences our next round of program designs. Baseline data can also be really valuable for the project implementers. So we have a situation in Zambia where we have an evaluation that collected really detailed data on household production strategies. What types of inputs are people using? Fertilizer? Are they planting trees? How much land do they have? How many plots are they managing? Who's managing which plots? And they're able to use that information in an aggregated way to help make decisions about what types of specific activities might be appropriate in different areas. So, for example, identifying which communities might need access to a secondary water source in order to be able to effectively plant trees, because some communities don't have access to a spring or a well. And the other important point is it's really important to share the baseline results with the communities and the individuals that you interviewed in the evaluation process. And this isn't just about sort of a routine process. It's really about transparency and building buy-in. I mean, people spend sometimes hours of their time with an evaluation firm answering long questionnaires in order to gather all the data that's required for a good evaluation. And if they don't see the results of that process, or at least some information come out of that process, then when the evaluation team goes back 2, 3, 4 years later, they're less likely to be willing to share information with the evaluation firm, and rightly so. And so one of the things that we try and build into all of our evaluations is both, in fact, sort of appropriate contextual compensation for evaluation respondents who agree to give us their time, but then also making sure that we share the data that we gather with them in a way that is contextually and sort of social, culturally appropriate. Another key point I want to make in terms of sharing results is that different audiences will be interested in different types of products from our evaluations. So as USAID, and oftentimes our partner governments, we might be primarily interested in what are the average changes. So what's the average household land holding in this area? What's the average incidence of land conflict in this area? And that again can help us sort of tailor our interventions and our policies to address the real situation on the ground. But the implementing partner, again, may be interested in much more detailed data. So they may want to understand better what are the differences in land conflict across a set of communities so that they can be sure to target their conflict prevention and alternative dispute resolution services in the communities that are most affected by conflict. And finally, communities themselves, as I mentioned, also are often interested in understanding basic information that's collected by the survey. For example, in many cases, the communities that we survey have never had the opportunity to understand how many parcels of land are in their community, what's the average land holding size, how many parcels are in forested areas, how much forested land is there left in their community. So there's a lot of really valuable information that comes out even at the baseline level for different stakeholders and different audiences. And finally, I just wanted to highlight that data sharing really requires planning and capacity building. one of the questions we get asked a lot from implementers who are interested in using the evaluation data for their programming is when they can get the data. And so planning for a reasonable time frame for cleaning and analyzing the data and putting it into a package that can be used by the implementer and other stakeholders is one consideration. But it's also important to understand what the capacity of the implementing partner and other stakeholders who might be interested in this data is to actually manage and use that data. So maybe the implementing partner is a local NGO and they don't have a statistician on board. They might be more interested in sort of village level summary sheets of the key statistics on land holding, agriculture strategies, women versus men holding land, etc., rather than getting a data file with 1,000 different variables and thousands of households who have reported on each of those variables. So I think it's important to consider who's using the information again and for what purpose and what their capacity is to use the information. And then I just wanted to briefly highlight that USAID does conform with US government's open data policy. And one particularly important point, especially for land programming evaluations, is the importance of protecting personally identifiable information. So these evaluations are collecting what could be considered sensitive data on conflict, land holding sizes, income, assets, wealth, and this information, if linked to particular people and if leaked to the wrong sources, could be potentially misused. And so we want to make sure that we protect the confidentiality of the respondents, the people who shared their information with us, while also getting that information out there in a format that people without access to proprietary software can use. So this is, using .csv files instead of an Excel. To make sure that even people without fancy statistical software can still download our data and use it for their research or programming.